Carl Karcher is not as well known as other California fast food entrepreneurs like Ray Kroc. However, I was still able to find a lot of information for this podcast. The research I did on his life include watching videos about the history of Carl's Jr., reading various articles as well as gathering context from Kevin Starr's book California. And I also combed through obituaries from newspapers. When all the sources are examined together, Karcher's life undoubtedly relates to the popular belief that California is a place where a person can strike it rich and or make a name for themselves. I'm doing this podcast because Karcher's early successes in a city where I live near is inspiring to me as a young adult, and Carl's Jr. remains one of my favorite fast food restaurants. So let's start. Carl Nicholas Karcher was born on a farm near Upper Sandusky, Ohio, on January 16, 1917, which would have been about a year before the end of World War I. Karcher's parents had German ancestors. During his 20s, he left Ohio and went to work at his uncle's feed store for $18 a week in the city of Anaheim, California. Anaheim, California was founded by 50 German families in 1857, which could have been a reason why Karcher had relatives there. When he made his decision to go out west, there were books and movies like The Grapes of Wrath, which portrayed California as a land of opportunity. Movies and books could have helped motivate Karcher to try his luck in the Golden State like so many others during his time. It's easy to see why people should move to Southern California today, especially when considering the travel advertisements on TV that depict the Golden State in all its glory. But the Anaheim Carl was moving to was still agrarian, and not at all like it is today. When he moved to Anaheim, there would have been a lot more orange groves, and it would have been far less developed than it is now. However, there was a significant boom in Orange County's population shortly after he officially moved to Southern California. According to Kevin Starr, on page 241 of his book California, between 1950 and 1961, Orange County, population 220,000 in 1950 and 704,000 by 1960, witnessed the construction of 2,500 housing tracts containing 144,000 building lots, which would have definitely helped the emerging fast food industry. While in Anaheim, Karcher went to St. Boniface Catholic Church. He met his wife Margaret Hines at that church. Thankfully, having faith doesn't cost money, which would have been good news for Karcher, because he didn't have much money. In 1941, he bought a hot dog cart in Los Angeles. He put $15 of his own money on the hot dog cart, and the rest of the capital that he needed to buy it came from a loan that he took out on his wife's Plymouth Super Deluxe. The first day his hot dog cart was operational, he made $14.75, which was a lot better money than he was making at his uncle's feed store. From an obituary, I learned that while Carl was away in the service during World War II, his wife operated his hot dog carts. Carl then bought more hot dog carts. After having some success with his hot dog carts and having returned home for more, Karcher opened Carl's Drive-In Barbecue at 1108 North Palm Street in Anaheim in the year 1945. Palm Street doesn't exist in Anaheim anymore, but today the first restaurant would have sat near Harbor Boulevard and Lincoln Avenue. A University of Washington library article includes information about how Carl and Margaret later donated that land and the building that sat there to their diocese, the St. Boniface Church. At their first restaurant, Carl's wife Margaret would help work as a cashier while he worked in the back and cooked. Carl's Drive-In Barbecue was a local hit. Karcher wasn't the first to use a drive-through type service at a restaurant. However, his inclusion of a drive-in type diner shows that some people in the 1940s had a need for quick service, much like many Californians today that want to be able to get good tasting food quickly. A little more than a decade after their first restaurant opened, in 1956, the first Carl's Jr. in Anaheim opened. Nancy Luna, writer for the Orange County Register, wrote that Karcher had the foresight to open a junior version of his drive-in. Interestingly, Walt Disney opened Disneyland only about a year before the first Carl's Jr. opened its doors, showing that during the 1950s, Anaheim was gradually becoming less agrarian, and there were people trying to take full opportunity of the population boom. 7 years before Karcher opened up the first Carl's Jr., he bought a large house in Anaheim. The house was built in 1926 on a 0.34-acre lot. It is 6,256 square feet, Spanish villa, with white walls and mosaic tiles that lead all the way up to the front doors. It still stands on the corner of Wilhelmina and Clementine, in a community that has a similar look to that of Old Town Orange. That house is where Carl raised his 12 children. It must have made him proud to be living in a house that was more than double the size of most of the others in the surrounding neighborhood. Carl's ability to buy this large house in 1949 helps prove that the belief that California is a place where a person can strike it rich and or make a name for themselves is possible even after the gold rush. The last time the home was sold was in August 2009 for $1,029,500, which was less than a year after Karcher died due to Parkinson's disease. CSULB.com estimates that if it sold in November 2019, it could sell for more than $2 million. By 1975, Karcher would have had no trouble paying for the house payment, considering that there was more than 100 Carl's Jr. locations in Southern California by that time. Less than a mile away from Karcher's home is St. Boniface Catholic Church. Karcher attended Mass there every week on Sunday, which might have helped him get it past the difficult moments in his life. One of those difficult moments came when Karcher was sued by the Securities and Exchange Commission for insider trading. He eventually settled the case in 1989 for $664,000. Around that same time, there was also protests from students at UCI that didn't want a Carl's Jr. on their campus. An LA Times article mentions that the protesting UCI students didn't want a Carl's Jr. because Karcher had donated to the Briggs Initiative, which if passed would have barred LGBT individuals from teaching in California public schools. In addition, some of the UCI students that were protesting were angered by the support of John Schmitz for the California Senate. Schmitz was a member of a far-right organization called the John Birch Society. In conclusion, Karcher had humble beginnings and got wealthy after he moved to the Golden State, which proves that the popular belief that California is a place where a person can strike it rich and or make a name for themselves is possible. What is important to me is that his successes didn't happen overnight, and instead it was hard work that paid off, as well as good timing on his part, which is motivating to me as a young adult that has worked in the restaurant industry now for 9 years. On Carl's Jr.'s official website in 2019, it says pioneers of the great American burger. Despite insider trading, supporting a far-right candidate, and opposing the LGBT community, Carl Nicholas Karcher deserves to be known as a successful pioneer in the fast food industry, whose life story relates to popular beliefs about California. Thanks for listening to my podcast.